Hello everybody, and welcome to this Traktor Bible tutorial. My name is Rainer Haselier, and today I want to show you how you can create an add-on mapping for the Kontrol S4 that allows you to do some beat gridding from the controller. This tutorial has two parts. In part 1, I want to give you a brief overview of the mapping architecture of Kontrol S4 and the Kontrol S2. This will help you to better understand what we are doing in part 2, where we're going to create the actual mapping. The Kontrol S4 and the Kontrol S2 support two different protocols to send data from the controller to Traktor and from Traktor back to the controller. The main protocol used is an own native instruments protocol called NHL for native hardware layer. The other protocol available is standard MIDI. When you connect the S4, it switches automatically to NHL mode. You can switch the S4 between MIDI and NHL by pressing Shift plus Browse, and the S2 can be switched to MIDI by pressing both Shift buttons. In NHL mode, you can use the default mapping and your own made user mappings. The default mapping for the S4 or the S2 is activated automatically when you start Traktor for the first time. The default mapping for both controllers is embedded inside the Traktor application and it cannot be changed. However, you can create an NHL user mapping and have that mapping running side by side with the default mapping. And this is what we're going to do in this tutorial, creating a user mapping that allows us to do some beat gridding from the controller. And finally, we have the generic MIDI mappings. These can be loaded at the same time as the NHL mappings, but you need to switch the controller to MIDI mode to activate the MIDI mappings. When the controller is in MIDI mode, the NHL mappings are ignored. How to create MIDI mappings would be a topic for another tutorial. Alright, so far the big picture. Let's turn to Traktor now and create the mapping. Go to Preferences and then go to the Controller Manager. Click on Add, then on Traktor, then on Kontrol S4, and then on User. This will add an empty user mapping to the Controller Manager. Now click on Edit, then on Edit Comment, and edit some description for S4 beat gridding. This will help you when you have more than one user mapping in the Controller Manager to manage them. As you can see here, I have several S4 user mappings loaded. You can actually deactivate a mapping by selecting it here in List Device, then go to Import and select None. Let's go back to the S4 beat gridding. When the mapping is ready, I want to be able to use the 4 monitor Q buttons together with the Shift buttons here to access the beat gridding functions. I've used these buttons because in the default mapping they are not mapped to any Traktor function when used together with Shift. So let's start by mapping the 2 Shift buttons. Click on Add, then on Modifier and select Modifier 1. Click on Learn, press the left Shift buttons, and you're going to use Interaction Mode Hold. And while the Shift button is pressed, the value shall be 1. We're going to make a duplicate and learn the right Shift button. In this case, the value shall be 2. Alright, as it is now, it doesn't matter if you press Q or Shift plus Q. The monitor Q function here, in this case for deck A, is always toggled. Before we can map our own functionality to Shift plus Q, we first need to neutralize the monitor Q function when the Shift button is held at the same time. And how are we going to do this? We simply add another monitor Q command set device target to deck A, learn the Q button, and set interaction mode to toggle. Our command shall only be executed when the shift buttons are held at the same time. So we set the modifier condition here for modifier 1 has to have the value 1, and then this command will be executed. Okay, what we have now is that the monitor Q command is mapped twice, once in the embedded mapping and once in our mapping. And because it's mapped as a toggle, this means that the status of monitor Q is toggled twice. Let's say first from on to off and then from off to on. So this neutralizes the embedded mapping. And now we can map our own function to shift plus Q. But before we do this, we need to repeat this step for the other Q buttons and for the shift button on the right side of the controller. Okay, we're ready with the neutralization, and now we can start with our own functionality. Let's start with lock BPM, and this is gonna be mapped to the Q button on deck C, but only when modifier 1 has value 1, and we're gonna do this in deck A. Now we have to add the other 7 commands. Alright, this ends the Neutralize and Remap tutorial. Have fun, make some music, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Adios.